Welcome back to the Early Weigh-In Podcast. This Saturday, UFC Nashville, right here in our city, in our backyard. Boys going to be there live. 12 fights on tap. Derek Lewis, Taliesin Teixeira, headliner. Wonder Boy Gabriel Bonfim as our co-main. Wonder Boy back in Nashville. Talked about it, man. Like 7 fights, 170 above, and even the men's fights at featherweight, lightweight that we got booked. Bangers. Fatima Klein maybe going to finish. Really excited for the card, man. As always, even though with a week off, we want to recap one of the worst nights of the year for myself, man. I did take a small shot on Charles Oliveira. For what it's worth, I mean, he kind of did what I wanted him to do early. He was pushing the grappling. He tried to take him down. He pushed him up against the fence. Ilya's just the man. And then Peyton Talbot, minus 900 to a plus 170. I probably should have hit that one harder, man. He went out there and put on another one of those just performances that I'll always remember, man. Dude looked good. And then, my biggest play of the night was over 3.5 rounds, which I was just about 3 minutes away from cashing in the co-main for Pantoja and Kaikar France. Man, I thought the only way that fight was going to finish was Pantoja sub. I still only put it maybe about 25%. It was happening late into the fight. So I don't know if I'd play it again, but I'm all right with that play. And then I kind of doubled down on the Emil and Delgado fight. I took a shot on Emil as an underdog, and fight goes to decision at plus money. For what it's worth, I really didn't get into it. The couple shots that were landed prior to the knee, I thought Hyder Emil looked pretty decent. And man, somebody's durable as Hyder Emil, it would be a knee, up the middle or something that finally breaks the durability, and it happens. Makes me look like a fool, but would have liked to see that fight kind of get started. So little minus 3.28 units for me. Throw it over to you. Super small loss, but could have been a big night for you, man. I'll let you talk about it.
Yeah, so I only had one straight bet on the night. It was Brandon Royval at plus 102 and plus 114. I actually had 4 units total on that. And true heartbreaker, man. It was the difference between a small loss at 0.25 and a little bit over 8 units profiting. Fight of the year. And, I guess when you're picking a dog, if it all comes down to a knockdown in the last round, it's really hard to be
All right.
too upset. But Joshua Van, new wave for sure, and he earned a spot. Only play that actually hit on the night was Talbot by decision at plus 500. I thought that was a pretty wild line. Like you said, one, Talbot was the side, and two, knowing how he gets it done most of the time and the quality of competition he was facing against Lima, the plus 500 decision was definitely a spot that I'm proud of. Took a couple more shots on Borishev rounds 2 and 3. Man, if he could have just made it out of that first round, it might be a completely different fight, but not one that we got to see play out. Yeah, so minus 0.25 units, not something, not something I like seeing when we're in the red, but it's not a terrible night. We can get past it.
Not at all.
We do start off the night in the women's strawweight division where we have Fatima Klein taking on Melissa Martinez. Fatima Klein coming in as a massive favorite. She's only 24 years old, and only loss in the UFC so far is to Jasmine Jasdavicius. I think that she probably walks through Melissa Martinez here. The only thing I am worried about is, Martinez has yet to be finished. She is a Mexican fighter, pretty notoriously tough fighter. So even though, minus 1200 is impossible to play, I did find a spot that I kind of like, and it's the round 2 and round 3. I think Martinez is going to be strong for that first round, but as she starts to slow down, I think that the grappling of Klein is really going to start to pick up. And I do think that we see her on top and finding the finish in rounds 2 or 3, whether it's ground and pound or submission. It sucks that it's not the greatest odds in the world, but I think it's a pretty decent way to play a minus 1200. So yeah, got a half unit on round 2 and a half unit on round 3 for Fatima Klein. Kind of just wanted some action on that first fight of the night.
Yeah, I think Fatima Klein gets us a finish in the first fight of the night myself. I think it comes on the ground. That's clearly the biggest advantage anybody has here. Fatima Klein, a really, really good prospect in the women's strawweight division. And, you know, Jasmine fight she took on super short notice. One of the girls absolutely surging in that division. I think Fatima Klein's going to be around a long time. And, I think Melissa Martinez is probably going to be around a long time. I really like her stand up, her kickboxing, her boxing. It's really on point. She sits and, sits down on her shots. But I just think there's kind of levels to where these people are at. And Fatima Klein's got the way more complete game. And, yeah, like yourself, man. I like that you're chasing best number possible on a women's finish, but I do think she gets a finish. The under 2.5 is still plus money, so I would love to have some action on the first fight myself, and so might see me on there somewhere with you, man. Moving up, men's 155 at lightweight, we got Mike Davis taking on Mitch Ramirez. Mike Davis is a super, super talented fighter that really doesn't fight all that much. But when he does, man, his stand up, his boxing, everything, man, looks really, really nice. His combinations, his technicality, I like what I see from Mike Davis on the feet. And the guy can wrestle as well. It seems to me like he has Mitch Ramirez covered pretty much everywhere. Mitch is tough. But as far as skill wise, I feel like I feel like he's outgunned pretty massively. The line indicates this as another minus 1,000 favorite here. So I like Mike Davis. Hopefully he can rebound from that last performance.
Yeah, so this is definitely a spot where you just sit back and hope that Mike Davis kind of shows us what he's actually made of after that last performance. He blames it on the paint in the locker room, but it seems like a pretty weak excuse. It was odd that he was coming out pulling guard, though, in his last fight. Mitch Ramirez seems like a perfect opponent for him to get back on track. Ramirez has had some tough competition in the UFC, and it's not getting any easier for him, so I do expect him to lose this fight. I'm just not willing to trust Mike Davis after I think I had 2.5 units on him against Faraz Ziam, and he gives us a stinker of a performance. So as a minus 900 favorite after that type of performance, I'm happy to just let this one slide and see if he comes back to his true form. Moving up to the heavyweight division, we have Kennedy and Zechukwu taking on Walter Walker. Um, I've seen Walker being somewhat of a popular dog this week. I understand it as far as odds are concerned. Betting Kennedy and Zechukwu minus 240 against anybody is a little sketchy in my opinion. He has looked like he's stayed pretty active throughout his in between fights. Been doing a lot of grappling, and it's probably a good thing because Walter Walker is going to try and get him to the mat. While it's on the feet, though, I think that Kennedy's going to be able to use that length and keep him at bay. But, if he could threaten some submissions while Walter Walker's trying to get him to the ground, especially as he starts to wear down in the second and third round, I do think that the openings are going to present themselves. And then for the Walter Walker side, if he does end up on top, like he's a true heavyweight, 6'6", a little light, not coming in at the 265, but he's still a legitimate heavyweight and probably Kennedy's toughest opponent yet in the heavyweight division. So if he does find himself on top, I do think that he could probably get some damage off. And we've seen him pull out 2 heel hooks in a row, which you don't see from heavyweights very often. So sneaky play on this is fight ins by sub. I think Kennedy's been working on it. Walter Walker likes to slow down. And I think that he's long enough that he could probably wrap up something. And then on the flip side, Walter Walker just selling out for something crazy again wouldn't surprise me either. So fight ins by sub is how I'd be looking to play this one. But I do think that Kennedy and Zechukwu, whether it stays on the feet or we get past that first round, he'll probably start to edge out and look like the favorite comes round 2 and 3. So give me Kennedy and Zechukwu here. Fight ins by sub is the play, though.
One I've struggled with, man, because for many of the reasons you said, Kennedy at heavyweight, I feel like this is his hardest test to date by far and a much different style than he's faced before. Someone who's going to try to get him down and use the real, heavyweight size, man. And Walter Walker knows where his bread's buttered. He's going to go out here and shoot takedowns, and at plus 170, I can't lie if I haven't thought about it a little bit this week, but all of the minutes are 100% probably going to be won by Kennedy on the feet. The athleticism, the volume. He's got the big cage here in Nashville to work with. You talked about his sneaky game, sub game being long, elbows against the cage, on sloppy takedown attempts. I don't know, man. I've kind of bounced back and forth all week. At the end of the day, I do think I'm going to side with Kennedy for a guy who's come out there and laid the egg multiple times at chalk. I never play it. So money line wise, man, I do feel like it's Vulture Walker or pass. I'm always trying to bet guys at plus money who could land a takedown and the round be over. But I kind of feel like Kennedy's coming to his own at heavyweight and it definitely holds his advantages here. So I'm going to pick Kennedy, just one I've struggled with all week. No bet for me there. Moving down to the women's flyweight, Lauren Murphy making her return after a while, taking on one of the more surging prospects, Eduardo Mora. You know, I don't know, man. Like, the line's kind of crazy. Like, truth be told, like, I don't know. Lauren Murphy is a punching bag, but she's a physical girl. She can kind of grapple, and I feel like that's Eduardo Mora's game. So I don't know, man. Being that she's been out for so long and she's 40 years old, I don't know if I'm going to bet Lauren Murphy, but I do struggle to see how Eduardo Mora covers a minus 600 because as tough as Murphy is, I don't know if she finishes her, and I don't know if she's as dominant with her grappling as she's been to other girls in the past. And so ultimately, I think the line is wide, and if it was anybody but Lauren Murphy, I would probably pull the trigger very easily. But picks Eduardo Mora, just think it's a greasy one, man. She doesn't cover the price tag.
Yeah, this is one where I've seen a few people on the under, and I do think that that over is going to hit. I mean, the line suggests it too at minus
Right.
330. And if you're not finishing Lauren Murphy notoriously pretty tough.
Yeah.
The 2 year layoff at her age is definitely cause for concern. So, like you said, it's still not enough, even at this price tag, to take a shot on her. And Eduardo Mora definitely still has some stuff to prove, even though in theory she's in the prime of her career at 31 years old. Um, Still new weight class, so it's still got some stuff to prove for sure. This is a sit back fight for me, but hopefully a violent one, especially if Lauren Murphy's toughness is on display again on Saturday. Moving up to the 170-pound division, we have Jake Matthews taking on Jaquani. Um, I know you like Chitty and Jaquani here, and so do I. I picked him up in the fantasy league. I think that he's going to have a pretty significant striking advantage. He's going to be the much faster fighter, but I am a little bit worried about him at 170 pounds with his chin. Jake Matthews, he's a veteran of the game. He knows how to mix up his game really well. We've seen him throw some pretty good overhands, some body work, and I think that that might be exactly what he needs to do to be able to catch Chitty and Jaquani, get him on the mat, make him think about some things so Jaquani doesn't get into that rhythm on the feet. But I see a potential for both of these guys to finish. I think, like I said, Chitty's going to be a much faster guy. He throws with some good shots, especially when he gets his knees and his elbows involved, and could certainly catch Jake. And then on the flip side, we've seen Chitty rocked a few times in his career, and we've seen Jake have some pretty nasty finishes in the past. This is a decently lined fight to not go the distance. I think it's plus 127 is what I got, and I just feel a little bit more comfortable getting the plus money on fight doesn't go the distance than trying to pick a side here in what I think is a coin flip fight. I see potential for finish for both the guys, so I like the under. I'm still going to go with Chitty and Jaquani, trust my gut, but not going to find me on the money line.
Yeah, 1.25 units at minus 125 to win a unit straight on GD. He's minus 155, minus 160. So a little bit of closing line value there makes me feel, I guess, a little good. I do think, like you said, he holds a significant striking advantage. Power, I mean, speed, the Muay Thai, technicality, everything, man. I really like Cheaty's stand up. I like the guy at 170. The last fight against Zaleski, I thought Zaleski, was much more of a takedown threat than Jake Matthews was, and I thought he presented much more power and was much more dangerous to GD on the feet than Jake Matthews was. And GD looked great, man. That was performance that I was 100% okay backing this guy at 125 against, again, what a guy that I don't think presents as many problems for him as Zaleski did. So I like the GD side. I would not be shocked if he goes out here and finishes him, but I do think he lands some more impactful shots, wins the battle in the clinch, and will do enough to get his hand raised, even if it goes to decision. Moving on up to the prelim main event, Chris Curtis taking on Max Griffin. We got Chris
I think
Curtis.
you're on him for a little more than.
Am I really? It is. It's
Yeah, yeah,
1.8
you're on him for
to win. Yeah,
1.86.
to win 1.5. My fault. To win 1.5. But yeah, moving on up, Chris Curtis taking on Max Griffin. Chris Curtis moving down to 170, not for the first time in his career, but I do believe the first time in his UFC career. Been fighting at middleweight since he's been in the UFC. You know, he was always undersized, so I think the move could be good for him as long as the chin and the weight is under control. I don't really know what Max Griffin is going to do to win here, man. He might put up a little bit more volume, but I don't know if you kind of bring the fight to Chris. I know he's a counter striker, but he'll put up some pretty decent volume, and I think he's got the better power. I don't see Max Griffin taking him down, and so you know, is he warranted of a minus 300? I don't know, but I do think Chris Curtis is deserving to be a pretty decent favorite here. Yeah, so unless the weight or something is a huge factor, I like Chris Curtis here pretty confidently.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat. Just given his age and everything, and then trying to cut down a little more weight, it's not a spot that I'm really looking to play. When I first heard the fight, I thought it would be a near even odds, and I was going to be all over Chris Curtis. But when you look at the price tag at this point, like I'm just not interested in laying that type of juice. Um, but yeah, so I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I expect Chris Curtis to win, but it's just one of those things where Max Griffin's not offering any type of takedown threat, and Chris Curtis's boxing usually wears on people. Um, and I just think he's a little bit cleaner of a striker here. So give me Chris Curtis, probably by decision, but not interested at all. Moving up to the first fight of the main card, we have Junior Tafa taking on Tuco Tucos. And, this is Tafa. This is the new 205-pound Tafa. The pictures that he's putting on social media, it looks like he slimmed down quite a bit. And truth be told, this probably should have been his weight class all along. I got a little cute on this play, but I see this fight being relatively sloppy, and with Tafa coming down in weight and Tuco's trying to get this fight to the mat, I really wouldn't be surprised if we have a couple of tight butthole moments early, and then we kind of see a slop fest for the remaining 10 minutes of the fight. So I've got the fight to go to decision at plus 400. If that doesn't happen, though, I think Tafa's probably going to get an early knockout. But I could definitely see Tukos being able to, get him to the mat, be successful, and Tafa's pretty tough. I forget who it was against, but he probably should have gotten finished quicker than.
It was his last fight.
Let's see, it was.
He was a newcomer, dude, on short notice.
Yeah.
So I don't remember his name.
Yeah. So
Sean
that's Sean
Sharaf.
Sheriff. He Sharaf. He was whooping the crap out of him for a while, and he was kind of able to endure it. I don't think Tukos even has that much ground and pound as Sharaf. So I see him either getting on top, riding it out for 15 minutes, or Tafa stinging Tukos a couple of times, but then kind of running out of steam himself, and we just get a slop fest. That's kind of the biggest against the grain play that I have for the card, and I do think that we see the fight hit the judges' scorecards at least more than 20% of the time.
I never wish for you to lose money, but being that we're there live and kicking off our main card, I hope there's a finish. I think the UFC thinks there's going to be a finish. I do think Junior Tafa is the much better striker, man. Maybe even the faster of the two, despite being the one coming down to light heavyweight. And I don't think Tukos is that good. I really don't. I think he's probably going to get lit up on the feet. But man, Tafa's ass on the mat, and if Tokos takes him down, I'm not so sure that he doesn't just mollywop Tafa on the mat, man. I'm pretty confident there's a finish here, but at least you got a great number. I think Junior Tafa round one knockout's how I see this going a lot of the time, so going to stick with it there. But love to see you cash at plus 400. Vitor Petrino, Austin Lane, 265. Man, it feels like this is like I don't know, try to get Vitor Petrino back on track type of fight. Austin Lane's somebody the UFC's never been kind to, always giving him to their prospects to get finished. And he got Petrino on the L2, finished in both of these. Losses to Anthony Smith, where he goes out there and sticks his neck in a guillotine multiple times. And then Dustin Jacoby, a guy really not known for his power, absolutely sleeping Vitor Petrino. You know, Petrino has all the potential in the world. The dude really does. Athletic specimen, dude, hits like a truck. I've started to think that he probably isn't going to have the ceiling that I once thought it was. But against Austin Lane here, I don't know, man. I just feel like one of the check left hooks and Austin Lane's going down. I don't want to count Austin Lane out for maybe landing a takedown or two, but I don't think he's got the cardio to do it all 3 rounds, which would probably be needed. And playing with Vitor on the feet, Jacoby's technical, man, but I think Austin Lane would get caught if they're going back and forth on the feet. So I like Petrino. I like Petrino inside the distance. Pretty much reflects it at -700.
Yeah, so I like Petrino inside the distance. I've got a play on him for like point 0.7 or 0.75 units on him round two. I think with the new weight class, he's probably going to want to feel it out a little bit. And then, like you said, Austin Lane is decent for the first 5 minutes until he
Right.
forgets how to fight. I do think that he could find some success just being a much bigger guy at 6'6" and a true heavyweight at that. So I could see him having success early. Petrino kind of settling into this new weight class, and then I think that ultimately Petrino's technique is going to take over, whether it's on the feet or Austin Lane just starts to wear out, and we see Petrino wind up on top. The over under was set at 1.5, and I tend to agree with it. It's right; it's a coin flip on when it's going to happen, but I do think that it happens in that second round. So Petrino plus, I think it was only plus 280. I've got a little bit of money on that, and I like that spot, honestly, for a -650 favorite.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty likely that it's going to happen in the second round. Moving up to the featherweight weight class, up the card to the feature. No, honestly, no, it's not. Shoot, still just the main card. So Nate Landwehr versus Morgan Charari at 145 pounds. We're both on the Tennessee boy Nate Landwehr. This is one where I feel like, you know, it would be a shame if we attended a live Nate Landwehr fight and we're not having a little bit of money on him. And then I think that this is also a spot where Morgan's just being a little overrated. He's a decent fighter, but I think somebody like Nate Landwehr, who pushes the pace that he does, is the exact type of fighter that kind of throws off Morgan's game plan. We look at his last fight against Nathaniel Wood. It was the activity of Nathaniel Wood that really threw him off. And I think that
Mhm.
Landwehr is going to be pushing that type of pace. He's going to be in his face the entire time. And as long as he can take the shots, Morgan's not necessarily a knockout artist, even though, his finishing ability, most of his wins are by knockout. I honestly think that there's a level of competition that kind of skews those finishes. So at this level, I do think that Nate Landwehr is going to be the pick for me, especially at these odds. I would maybe give Morgan Charari -150, but when you get to the -250s and we're seeing Nate Landwehr at +235, this is just a must play spot, and I'm happy to do it live. Hopefully, our Tennessee boy does us proud, and Nate Landwehr is somebody who will always fight for your money. So not going to be upset no matter how it goes.
Yeah, man, you touched on a ton of the points. Same for me. A dude who's absolutely going to fight for my money. This is a fight that's been relatively put together short notice, and it's Nate Landwehr getting it in his backyard, not Morgan getting it a month and a half from now in Paris like he normally does and stuff. So I don't want to say the UFC's kind of given up on him, but it kind of shown that they're not really concerned about putting this guy on his Paris card again. He's a guy who, in the UFC, he's finished both of his fights, but it's bottom of the barrel, man. And when he's getting anybody good, the volume is super low. Nathaniel Wood stung him early and just looked like he had him all out of sorts the rest of the fight. I was on Nathaniel Wood, I think, +140 in that fight. Happily on Nate Landwehr at +215 here. Someone who's going to have double the activity, someone who could probably mix in takedowns as well. And yeah, man, for a lot of the reasons, I just don't think that Morgan Charre is somebody as low volume as he is, who can be outpaced by someone with better cardio, and somebody who's 5-10 to the decision. I mean, this guy has found a way to lose 11 fights, and you're giving me plus 215 on Nate Landwehr. One of the easiest bets of the week for me. So let's go Clarksville, stand up. I can't wait for the post fight interview in his backyard. Probably what I'm looking forward to most, man. Calvin Cater versus Steve Garcia, staying at 145. Another absolutely banger of a fight. You and I both on the underdog here, Calvin Cater. I took him at plus 105. I think you sniped him at plus 110. You know, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, we're looking at a minus 300 Calvin Cater here. And because he's lost to some of the best guys in the division and a Yusuf Zalal who was extremely hard to find when you're a boxer like Calvin Cater, career trajectories seem to be going in different ways. But Steve Garcia is just, I don't know, man. If Steve Garcia doesn't get you out of there in round one, I'm not sold on his cardio. I'm not sold on his ability to really put together an MMA skill set. I think he's honestly the less durable of the two guys. I still like Cater's hands. I still like Cater's cardio. I like his boxing. If this fight gets out of round one and you start letting Calvin Cater get into it, yeah, I thought it was a super easy play. I hate that it's a guy on like a 4-fight losing streak versus a 5-fight win streak, but one of these spots like Faziev, man, maybe a couple weeks ago, it's like, I don't know, huge step up, man, and counting out the guy because he's lost to some good competition. So I like Calvin Cater, and if he doesn't get put out in one, I think he starts to dominate this fight. Might even find himself a late finish.
Yeah, the only thing that's holding me back from a bigger position here is the age on Calvin, and then him coming off of some of those surgeries. He's had a pretty tough run in the past 5 years, but man, it's against the best guys in the division. He's whooping on Giga, but he's losing to Holloway, Emmett, Allen, Sterling, and Yusuf Zalal. Maybe not known as one of the best in the division, but his career is having a resurgence by far since he came back into the UFC, and he looks really good. For Steve Garcia, he's put together a pretty decent 3-fight win streak, but honestly, he's kind of lucked up in the competition that he's been faced up against. I don't think that Sungwoo Choi, it kind of gave him the fight that he wanted, and he was able to catch him. The Melky Costa fight is probably the best win of his career, but again, it was one of those fights where he got a knockout relatively early in the fight, and it just worked out in his favor. Kyle Nelson was on one of the weakest winning streaks in the UFC, and he was bound to lose eventually. So, again, it doesn't really surprise me. This jump up to Calvin Cater, whenever Steve Garcia is not going to offer much to getting the fight to the mat, I just think Calvin's a much cleaner boxer. And as long as this stays on the feet, I think his chin holds up. I see a lot of people saying that, his chin is bound to crack. That's just not a position I like to take. I've tried to do it with like Kelvin Gastelum in the past, and it doesn't matter how many wars these guys have been in. If they've proven time and time again that they can take the shots, you got to trust it until it actually happens. So I think Calvin withstands that early pressure and then really starts to take over with his technique. And so I'm happy that we're both on the Calvin Cater side for sure. Moving to the co-main event, Stephen Wonderboy Thompson taking on Bonfim. Yeah, man, this is another one where I feel like some of my bias is getting in the way, but at the same time, like I think this is a decent fight for Stephen Thompson. As far as Bonfim kind of known to slow down a little bit. I think that Thompson keeps his technique throughout the fight. As long as this stays if he can keep this fight on the feet and withstand or avoid the early submission attempts that he's going to receive. I think that he starts to take over, especially late. So I think that he could put together a similar game plan to Nicholas Dalby. That's certainly the closest guy that I can liken him to the opponents that Gabriel Bonfim has had to face up until this point. And I wouldn't doubt that this was a picked opponent for Wonderboy Thompson. At this point in Thompson's career, he's only choosing the fights that he thinks that he can win. And I think that he sees some holes that he can exploit in Gabriel Bonfim's game. So, Another one where we're going to be here live. Wonderboy Thompson's my pop's favorite fighter. He's one of my
Yeah.
favorite fighters. I'm not going to miss out on making some money whenever he's sitting at plus 235 in a matchup against a grappler. He's one of the best strikers, even though he's a little bit later in his career. He's one of the best strikers in the game, ever will be. And I like him in this spot right here, man.
Yeah. Plus 325, not 225.
Plus 325,
Yeah.
325.
Yeah. Man, if Gabriel Bonfim doesn't find the round one submission, I think Wonderboy gets his reads, dices him up the last two, and maybe even get to finish himself. And when I watch Gabriel Bonfim back, his wrestling it's all right, but man, some of these submissions, he's stinging these guys on the feet before jumping the guillotine, and I don't know if he's going to have those opportunities to find Wonder Boy on the feet. If he does get Wonder Boy in a submission, I think he's going to have to get him down. And Wonder Boy's shown some pretty damn good takedown defense. He's always in incredible shape, even at his age. He's still an active fighter. I mean, and even in the fights where he's gotten knocked out with like Pettis um, and Buckley. I mean, it's fights that he's clearly winning. And Shavkat and Gilbert Burns. I mean, like I'm hesitant to put Bonfim on that level of ground game. So I think Gabriel Bonfim is a good fighter, but at this point, even at Stephen Thompson's age, I think he's bitten off a little bit more than he can chew. And if you're going to give me plus 325 on the guy that I know is the better striker and I know has the better cardio and has the full cage to work with here, yeah, yeah, little bias too. Throw that in there. Stephen Thompson plus 325, easy click for both of us. Uh, Derek Lewis and Taliesin Teixeira. After we got Rob Font and Corey Sandhagen, I think the UFC said, hopefully here's you a fight that ends in under half a round. Derek Lewis, at his age, man, you really don't know what you're going to get with him. He either comes out there and is putting these guys away or kind of been being put away himself. And even in the Nascimento fight, didn't really look good, man. He can be taken down, and I feel like that's a path to victory that Taliesin can take here. The fight against Justin Taffa, I know it lasted like 20 seconds, but he shot a takedown the moment the fight started. It didn't, the takedown landed into him pushing him up against the fence, but he committed to a takedown as soon as the fight started. So I'm not going to count out him trying to get Derek Lewis down immediately as this fight starts. Taliesin Teixeira is a guy who comes forward, though, man, fights at a really good pace, throws a lot of volume, hits really hard, and I don't know if Lewis is really going to be able to take it at this stage, but the dude's 8-0. He's never been tested. He gets hit all the time. And, dude, you're fighting the guy with the most knockouts in UFC history, and it's plus 225, north of plus 300 something for a Derek Lewis knockout. I think before the fight starts, I'm likely going to have at least a half a unit on a Derek Lewis knockout just for the hell of it. Taliesin Teixeira truly has done nothing to deserve or warrant this price tag. It's all on us thinking Derek Lewis is shot, and that might be the case, but plus 300 something on the knockout king. Give it to me live in Nashville. Derek Lewis TKO.
Yeah, so I've already played it 0.75 units for plus 330 on Derek Lewis by knockout.
There you
This
go.
is just to withstand the early pressure from Taliesin Teixeira, and I think we see him take over. It's happened so many times in the past. Marcin Tybura round 3 knockout, Alexander Volkov round 3 knockout. Even in his last one, like he's still doing it at 40 years old. Third round knockout against Nascimento. And if we can just get Taliesin Teixeira into these unfamiliar waters outside of the first round, I really think that there's a good shot that Derek Lewis puts on a show for Nashville. And again, I'm not going to be there live and miss out on a Derek Lewis TKO. So I'm super happy to get him at plus 330. And then, doesn't mean much. Doesn't mean that this is going to actually have any effect on the fight. But Brazilians are 1-9 in main events in 2025, and I hope the trend continues with Taliesin
Yeah.
Teixeira here. So this is for what it's worth, this is a favorable matchup for Derek Lewis. Taliesin probably isn't going to shoot for the takedown, and if he's willing to stand and bang with the KO King, I think he might be in for a long night, dude. So I'm happy that you're also on it, and I want to see Derek Lewis get another win before we see him hang up the gloves.
Yeah, you and me both, man. I appreciate you guys hanging out with us. UFC Nashville. You boys are super pumped for it. Going to be section 114, right where the fighters are walking out. So ready for Saturday night, man. Hopefully a winning night for us both. And we'll be back next week to see y'all.
Peace.